OnePlus 7 Pro 5G or OnePlus 7T? Yes, that was an MC Scat Cat and Paula Abdul reference. Google it if you're a millennial. One step forward, two steps back. It might seem like a true idiom where these two are concerned, but that's only if you don't look closely at what the OnePlus 7 Pro has to offer. For some buyers, this could be the better, more compelling option that dances its way into becoming their new daily driver. Hey, if this video helps you, any of the videos here on reviews.org, please hit that thumbs up, give us that subscription, and hit that notification bell. That way you'll know as soon as we upload the latest home services and gadget reviews. This is going to be somewhat of a hybrid review. I'm reviewing Sprint's Nebula Blue OnePlus 7 Pro 5G with 8 gigabytes of RAM and 256 gigabytes of storage. But I'm also going to give you some insight and some feedback on my use of it on Sprint's 5G network here in Los Angeles, taking a look at its signal quality in open areas and in-building penetration using the Speed Test app by Ookla. Since we're looking at phone and service for this review, I'm going to start with pricing. The phone is currently available for $20 per month on Sprint's 18-month flex lease or $840 full price, and you'll need a 5G plan, of course. Sprint has 3 post-paid unlimited plans: Unlimited Basic, Plus, and Premium, $60, $70, and $80 respectively for one line. So, what are the differences, the immediate differences between the OnePlus 7 Pro 5G and the OnePlus 7T? The former has a larger, higher resolution screen, larger battery, and pop-up selfie camera for the security conscious. And of course, 5G. It was released just 3 months ahead of the 7T. Cosmetically, the 5G has the infinity edges around the edge of the display, where the 7T has a flat display. On the back of the phones, the camera bump on the 5G is a vertical stack, while the 7T uses the circular camera configuration, referred to by some as the Oreo. Let's look at the hardware on the OnePlus 7 Pro 5G. The right side of the phone is where you'll find the power button and alert slider. With a flick, you can set the phone to ring out loud or vibrate or be in silent mode. Bottom of the phone is where you'll find one half of the stereo speaker pair, the USB-C charge port, and the SIM tray, which does not have space for a memory card. Keep that in mind when purchasing the phone, as there's no expandable memory, so if you can swing it financially, definitely go with the 256 gigabyte model. You'll also find a microphone down there. On the left side of the phone, you'll find the volume rocker, and that's it. Top of the phone is where things get interesting. You'll get a microphone and a motorized pop-up selfie camera, the front-facing camera. Security-conscious folk and conspiracy theorists rejoice. This front-facing camera is a 16-megapixel wide-angle camera with auto HDR and 1080p at 30 frames per second video recording. Just below, on the front of the phone, you'll see the separate speaker grill, which is the other half of the stereo pair of speakers, and it gets plenty loud. Music at peak volume never sounded distorted. It never sounded like it couldn't handle any of the tracks I put through it. It actually had decent, now this is for small speakers, decent bass response in mids. It really was a nice, full, robust sounding stereo sound image reproduction, with the bottom speaker handling mostly the bass and mids, and the top speaker here handling most of the treble. Just below that speaker grill is the beautiful AMOLED display with very little bezel. It has roughly 88% screen to body ratio with a 1440 by 3120 resolution that supports HDR10 Plus and a 90 hertz refresh rate. I grabbed this high-res Cannon Busters wallpaper and made it with this display. It almost looks three-dimensional. Also on the front, under the display, you're going to get an optical fingerprint reader. Around back, the phone sports a 48 megapixel wide-angle camera with optical image stabilization, laser autofocus, and phase detection autofocus, an 8 megapixel telephoto lens for macro shots, and a 16 megapixel ultra-wide angle lens which gives you a 117-degree field of view. Under those cameras, the phone houses a 4,000 milliamp hour battery equipped with 30-watt warp charging. What that means for you is that you're going to get fast charging speeds where you're going to go to around 60% charge in 30 minutes from a dead battery using the supplied charger. And that's it for hardware. Let's look at the software and user experience. Oxygen OS is a wonderful overlay to Android 9 Pie and features enhancements and customizations which make the phone a joy in day-to-day use without adding a bunch of bloatware or unnecessary features which get in the way. Let's dig into it. The home screen launcher in Oxygen OS is fairly stock Google, but instead of having to swipe from the top of the screen, you can swipe anywhere on the screen to get the notification shade. Just pull down from any blank area. With the display this large, that is a welcome feature. There's no app drawer icon, but swiping up from the arrow just above the home screen icons gets you into the app drawer. We'll get into the navigation options down there with that pill in a second. On many Google devices, swiping right from your main home screen brings you to the Google screen, which shows you Google News and information, but the 7 Pro 5G gives you Oxygen OS Shelf. This gives you a handy toolbar of app shortcuts and a great feature called parking location, and then allows you to add a few different widgets directly to Shelf so that you can customize its functionality. Parking location is really cool because it allows you to manually mark your parking location using GPS and take photos of the location when you can't get a GPS signal with some indoor parking locations. The feature even keeps track of time, so you'll know ahead of time when your meter expires. When it's time to get back to your car, just use Google Maps to navigate back to where you parked. Jumping into the settings menu, you can go into the display menu and you're going to find that from there you can adjust the phone's brightness. Then I'd suggest going into screen calibration and adjusting the color appearance to your liking. You get the options of vivid, natural, and advanced. I went into advanced and I like my screen warm, so I chose AMOLED wide gamut with the slider set all the way to warm. If you prefer things to look a little more realistic, you should look at natural and display P3. Screen refresh settings are also in the display menu. This phone gives you the option to use the standard 60 Hz refresh rate most phones use, or the faster 90 Hz refresh rate. What that means is that you will see faster, smoother animations and scrolling on the phone, but you're also going to see a hit to battery life. And being that this is the 5G version of the Pro line, that may be even a bit more exaggerated when you're in an area where the phone is trying to connect to weak 5G signals. I didn't find the hit to battery life to be too big a deal to turn it off, but with 60 Hertz activated, there is definitely a difference. So you'll have to play with that to see which one better suits your usage patterns. Going into the ambient display option allows you to choose which clock style you want when the screen is locked but wakes, or when you tap it to see your notifications. The OnePlus 7 Pro 5G does not have always on display, but you can tap to show or pick up your phone and you'll see what is relevant to you. Here you can also change wallpapers, theme, accent colors, and font sizes. Going into the sound and vibration menu allows you to adjust the Dolby Atmos settings and earphone settings. You can also adjust what the phone does when earbuds are connected. Of course, you have all the usual settings for sound and vibration, which you can go through. The buttons and gestures menu is where you can set up the navigation bar and gestures and other shortcuts. You can go with the traditional back, home, and recents fixed nav bar at the bottom of the screen, or you can go with the more recent navigation pill, or you can go with the Apple-like navigation gestures. I personally prefer the navigation gestures as it gets rid of any nav bar being at the bottom of the screen, thus giving you more screen real estate. I did, however, use the navigation pill option with the case that comes with the OnePlus 7 Pro 5G in the box. It has a lip at the bottom which interferes with swiping up from the bottom of the screen and quickly becomes an annoyance. Using a case which has a cutout at the bottom, like this one on the iPhone Max I'm using, makes gesture navigation a joy to use. For manually launching the Google Assistant when you have gesture-based navigation turned on, you're going to want to turn on the option to quick activate the Assistant app. This turns the power button into a quick launch for the Google Assistant. Half a second press to launch the Assistant, 3 seconds to power the phone off. The quick gestures menu has some really cool features, so get in there and play with those to see if any will enhance your use. The most compelling are the options to draw letters on the screen to activate shortcuts while it's locked. This works most frictionlessly with face detection turned on, but it's still a solid feature when you're using the fingerprint sensor. Rounding out the list of features that are useful in Oxygen OS is native screen recording, which allows you to record both internal and external audio while capturing what's going on your screen. Then, in addition to the screen time and digital well-being options we're seeing on so many phones these days, you get Zen mode, which is hardcore and will lock out every app and distraction for a set time from 20 to 60 minutes, except for incoming and emergency calls and the camera. Zen mode is hardcore because once you start it, you cannot cancel it. Before we get to the 5G experience, let's talk briefly about the camera. This is the first time OnePlus has launched 2 variants of its phones, and this flagship, being higher priced, is meant to compete with other top-tier flagships like the Galaxy S line and iPhone Pro models. Off the bat, one of the big differences is that you aren't going to get wireless charging. The folks at OnePlus say that it's still too slow. The other area OnePlus has to compete is in the camera quality. I'll tell you right now that in extreme dark lighting situations, the iPhone's night mode fares better than both the OnePlus 7 Pro 5G and the Galaxy Note 10 in my testing, using a sculpture in almost no light. But in regular use, normal people's use, I actually found the OnePlus night mode to be quite good and do well with keeping grainy noise to a minimum in your typical low light situations. In these photos I took the night I went to an event for the new show Hunters, you can see that images are clear, crisp, and vivid. Even more telling is this marquee shot with the sky in the background. When you zoom in, you'll notice that the black of the night sky is black and there's very little noise or graininess in the shot. Even using the wide-angle lens produced images with very little noise, and as you know, with wide-angle lenses, most of them aren't set up to handle low light conditions as well as your primary lens. And in these cityscapes I took, the majority of the lighted signs in the image aren't blown out like they were in other phones' cameras I took with me that night to the test. At night, lesser quality camera sensors and software have a hard time balancing the contrast of brightly lit signs with the dark areas of an image and tend to completely blow out the signs so you can't read them. They just show up as fuzzy white squares. In this image, you can clearly see the owl sign, and the others are clearly legible and crisp. Those 2 white ones just didn't have any letters on them at the time. The front-facing camera in portrait mode does a solid job of cutting out the background, although, like many cameras, it can be a bit rough around the edges with my beard, as you can see here. Still, the colors are sharp and true to life without being oversaturated. It's a solid shooter, and OnePlus claims they've tested this pop-up mechanism for around 300,000 uses. Now, my 5G experience on Sprint's network was actually a good one. Sprint's LTE would get me around 100 megabits per second indoors, while that millimeter wave 5G got almost 250 megabits per second download speeds with 21 megabits per second upload speeds, according to the Speed Test app. That millimeter wave 5G signal really did a great job penetrating into the building where I work, where many of my coworkers don't even get an LTE signal on many of their phones on competing networks. Specifically, this Sprint millimeter wave signal was also enabling, and this is something you have to keep in mind because it is 5G and the speeds and bandwidth are so much faster. When I would go to play videos on the phone, it automatically loaded the 1440p versions on YouTube, whereas other devices with LTE, it would auto load 1080p. So one of the things you're going to get with 5G, where the signal is good, where you have signal, is you're going to have phones whose higher end features are enabled. Whether or not that's important to you, whether you care if you're looking at 480p, 720p, 1080, 4K, whatever on your mobile device is up to you. And now as I drove around, let's be clear that 5G is still deploying. So there were areas, many, where there was no 5G. But when I drove around and I was in West LA, Santa Monica, Pasadena, Monrovia, in the San Fernando Valley, I was getting areas of 5G there. So your mileage may vary. You're going to want to test where you work and where you live and maybe some of the locations you frequent to see if it's worth it to pick up 5G for you. For a full description of the different types of 5G, you can listen to my brother from another mother, Craig, talk to you about all that you need to know about 5G, and we'll take that link and put it in the description as well. When I first received this test unit from Sprint, the battery was running down pretty doggone fast because it was searching for 5G signals quite frequently. But what I've noticed in the last couple months since then is that the battery's lasting much longer, pretty much like it should under standard use case scenarios experienced with 4G LTE. That said, we're probably a couple years away from ubiquitous 5G coverage, and this phone is going to cost you roughly $300 more than its non-Pro counterpart, which is not officially available on Sprint's network. Currently, this is the only OnePlus device available officially through Sprint. That said, if you're wanting to jump into the 5G waters, the only less expensive phone in Sprint's 5G lineup at the time of this video is the LG V50 ThinQ 5G at $600. All of Sprint's other 5G phones are Samsung's latest devices, and well, you know, those all start at $1,000. So thank you for sticking with me through this lengthy review. There was a lot to talk about. Ultimately, I think the OnePlus 7 Pro 5G is actually one of the best Android devices on the market, if it's the Sprint network you have service on. Generally speaking though, the OnePlus 7 Pro line offers current flagship specs at prices which aren't quite as steep as other flagship devices from competing manufacturers. So if $1,000+ phones aren't the ones for you, OnePlus should be atop your list of phones to look at for the top of the line specs at prices which are a bit less cringeworthy. Hey, we don't take it lightly that you took time out of your day to spend with us and watch this video. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave those in the comments section below. I will happily get to them. And again, we just appreciate you and thank you for watching. See you on the next video.